Welcome to On Air. I'm Klara Syrewicz, and this is our special end of the year edition. New Year's Eve is in a few days. Do you know what you will wear? That question is a double jeopardy if you're a politician. Once you become a public figure, your face and image will appear in the media on average 1,200 times per day. We might scoff that outfits shouldn't be at the top of the priorities list, and to understand what I mean, you should really see how I dress outside of work. But unfortunately, image making equals soft power. Just look at the PR masterstroke that is Volodymyr Zelensky's olive green t-shirt and military-style sweaters. So let us help you make the right choices with our sartorial guide inspired by politicians and their spouses. We'll start with women's attire, for women understood early on how clothes can amplify a message, be it of outrage or solidarity, starting with the suffragettes' tricolour sashes. For women in public posts, choosing a gimmick has always been a good way to establish a visual brand. One example is Margaret Thatcher's Iron Lady blouse, channeled subliminally by Kamala Harris in her presidential campaign, or Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's red lipstick and her Tax the Rich dress. Madeleine Albright and former Polish Prime Minister Beata Szydło had lapel pins, while Brigitte Macron has defiantly short skirts, denigrating her critics' snickering ageism.
But Red, I don't know how I dare wear it.
You will, though.
Of course, there's that coat. Yes, Melania, we figured you didn't care about incarcerated children because you were too busy putting together supremacist-themed Christmas decorations at the White House.
I'm working like my ass off that Christmas stuff that, who gives a about Christmas stuff and decoration, but I need to do it, right? And then I do it, and I say that I'm working on Christmas, planning for the Christmas, and they said, oh, what about the children? That they were separated. Give me a break. I don't give a
Let's not scold poor Melania anymore. After all, she said she was the most bullied person in the world during an interview in Kenya, in which incidentally she wore a colonial-styled suit, complete with a white pit helmet straight from a 19th century slavery handbook. I wonder if she got to shoot some lions and entertain herself with the funny theatrics of the local savages to take her mind off those sad thoughts. And now, here's something for the hashtag menswear crowd.
Hey, nice clothes, gentlemen. I didn't know the Salvation Army was having a sale.
Hey! Where did you get those clothes? At the toilet store?
Whether the suit is in a shade of burgundy or a classic navy, its task is to hide the individual behind the uniform. With such limited choice, there shouldn't be too many ways to go wrong. But of course, there are. Theoretically, if you represent the interests of millions of voters, it would be good to show that caring for your outfit or your hair isn't too much for you to handle. However, a disheveled look can be spun to your advantage. A demonstrative obliviousness to your public image is usually combined with an ostentatious focus on duties and the greater good. The somewhat frumpy style communicates a kind of self-effacement. Just look at former British Prime Minister Boris Johnson or former Polish PM Jarosław Kaczyński. Unfortunately, this faux charm evaporates once you get involved in a lucrative construction deal, embezzle millions in public funds, or break strict COVID lockdown rules to throw several parties. Hypocrisy will undo even the strongest effort at myth-making. And in that regard, expensive outfits are even more dangerous. The recently assassinated Hamas chief Yahya Sinwar, who projected a highly principled political martyr persona, had his posthumous image tarnished by photographs of his wife taken shortly before the terrorist massacre of October 7th, entering a Gaza tunnel holding what looked like an Hermes Birkin bag worth about $32,000. Some commentators disputed the handbag identification, but the reputational damage was done. Regardless of the bag's authenticity, it's also worth noting the accusation came from Benjamin Netanyahu's government, who, along with his spouse, has more corruption charges related to luxury gifts than there's time to mention in this program. And speaking of time, the most common political fashion pitfall is the Watchgate. Last year, during a televised interview, President Emmanuel Macron was seen discreetly taking off his Bell & Ross luxury watch, worth about $2,500, ostensibly because it was tapping against the table. When he rested his forearms earlier, a clunk was indeed audible. But since he was talking about raising the age of retirement, a widely contested austerity measure, the move was seen as damage control. Macron wasn't the only one trying to abracadabra his watch away from media scrutiny. Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov got a helping hand from a deputy defense minister to hide his timepiece from photographers. And compared to what he was trying to hide, Macron's watch feels like some dingle-dangle trinket. Peskov's watch is worth over $500,000. But you can even get in trouble for eyeglasses, of course, if those were offered by a particularly generous party donor. In September, freshly minted British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and his wife were accused of accepting luxury freebies, including clothes and $3,000 worth of glasses, after running on a platform meant to clean up Tory sleaze. Although politicians and public figures usually face scrutiny over how their fashion choices align with economic realities, there's one politician whose rich guy, gold-dripping, fake tan aesthetics somehow don't ring false with the popular electorate. And that's, well, how would you not know? He sits on golden toilets and peddles golden sneakers, because if there's one message from his campaign that resonated most with the public hungry for economic improvement, it was this: I am rich. Do you want to be like me? Then make me president. So what will you remember most from this year's world events? We asked TVP World's journalists for their subjective rankings. Here's what they said.
I've covered lots of stories throughout 2024, but among the most vivid ones that I recall is, of course, the floods that took place in southwestern Poland. I was there for more than a week. I saw towns, villages be flooded with water, but I also saw people save their towns because of their joint effort in, for instance, rebuilding embankments. Another event that I attended was Exercise Pikne in Estonia. That was in early December. 2,000 troops from NATO countries, France, the United Kingdom, trained on the border with Russia in Estonia. Very much message of deterrence to Russia. Of course, as I cover defense, I've also attended 2 NATO meetings in Brussels, one attended by foreign ministers of NATO member states, the other one by the defense ministers.
Through the year, I got to go to Germany to see how the increased border controls look like. And then I also went to Moldova to see the presidential elections and the European referendum votes. So I actually got to see Maia Sandu, the re-elected president of Moldova, cast her vote. And that was really great to see the people chanting as she was approaching the polling station. So that was very exciting. It was my first time covering the elections. So it was a year of personal growth. I really liked it.
Well, when I was in the studio, I was able to go to the 75th NATO summit in Washington, D.C., which was obviously a big one. The U.S. elections, where Donald Trump was chosen as president, against what polls had said before earlier. We thought it was going to be a close election. It wasn't. And then, of course, Georgia. I was in Georgia several times this year and able to follow the developments taking place there. And obviously, it's all accumulated at the end of the year here with these big protests, the police cracking down on the protesters. And of course, well, we still have to see what happens with the president on the 29th of December.
The most fascinating month was November, because in November we had the privilege and the opportunity to go to Bratislava in Slovakia. And there we met two fascinating arts curators on both sides of the political divide. One from the Slovak National Museum and one from the Slovak National Gallery. And the Slovak National Gallery are staunch opponents of the Fico government. Well, second event at the Camera Image International Film Festival, I had the privilege to talk to Magnus van Horn, the director of The Girl with the Needle, and I believe it's such a smashing movie with really great chances for an Oscar this year. And lastly, Zahenta National Modern Art Gallery had this amazing exhibition about an Armenian, Ukrainian, Georgian queer director and an artist, and he's called Parajanov. The exhibition was amazing. It's a great role of a cultural correspondent to be able to cover both politics and culture.
Hello, John. Welcome back in our program.
Hello, Klara.
So what will you remember from this year's world events?
For me, it's elections. We had nearly 2 billion people go to the polls across the world, 70 countries. And in America, we saw a change of power. Also in Britain, we saw a change of incumbent, in France and Germany as well. And what we've seen is an increase in the right, in the far right, but also a shift in the political spectrum towards the right. It happened in the EU elections as well, where we saw Greens and Liberals lose out to the far right. And it's really those sort of movements, the conservationists and those sorts of issues that have lost out. I want to give you the example of Romania, where the issue of bears, the country's 8,000-strong bear population, became a political issue.
So I guess that was actually an issue in Romania, particularly, that was picked up by the far right, which had very good election results in parliament. But then I guess in Romania, the bears were not the main topic, because Călin Georgescu and his TikTok campaign got everyone's attention here.
It's sensational in that a rank outsider rocketed through the polls on social media. I mean, what was your reaction when you heard about this? And the investigation into the campaign.
Well, I immediately associated that with whatever happened earlier this year, actually, in Moldova, or other influence campaigns by Russia. And actually, I was wondering what your word of the year would have been for this year, because mine would have been hybrid warfare. But what is your word of the year?
I'm going to go for assassination. It was stunning to learn of the 2 attempts on Trump's life, one of which was very nearly successful. Very nearly successful attempt on Robert Fico's life as well. But really, those are huge events that probably shaped a lot of perception around elections.
Isn't that interesting? I mean, isn't that interesting how we kind of got on with those facts? I think several years ago it would have been much more of a news item, and here I guess everyone just forgot about it quite quickly. I'm
in this list of assassinations, or attempted assassinations. I'm also going to add the name of Navalny, Russia's key, foundational sort of opposition figure, who's no longer present, having failed to do him away with, poison him with, poison underpants or whatever it was. There's a sad loss that this fellow sacrificed himself. Yeah,
so actually there were other targeted assassinations perpetrated by states. For example, you had the Qasem Soleimani commemoration explosions when 100 people died after he himself had been the target of a successful assassination several years before. You had the exploding pages, more brazen, more formidable means.
Well, I think everyone was surprised, and especially with the follow-up surprise with the Hezbollah targets in Lebanon. But you mentioned hybrid warfare. I mean, this is something that's becoming more and more apparent. We saw a report out last week from the US Helsinki Commission that broke down Russia's hybrid war. 150 examples since the invasion started.
I guess the public's perception of the threat is more tangible now. But I mean, this is quite gloomy. Do you think there are any positive developments stemming from this year?
Yeah, I gained some hope from something you mentioned earlier about understanding that Russia was interfering in the elections in Moldova, Romania and Georgia. And really it's President Zurabishvili has highlighted how those three elections were likely testing grounds for Russia's new approach. She described it as an electoral war, having failed in Syria, where they've run away with their tails between their legs, and little or no gains in Ukraine compared to their initial targets. They're now looking at elections. And she warned Europe about this because we've got significant elections coming up next year, presidential poll, the German general election, but also elections in the Czech Republic, Moldova.
In Poland as well.
Exactly. And so there's an awareness of that, and I gained some hope from that. Yourself?
I figured that science might save us, or might save the day, at least for this year. The company Neuralink was the first company to successfully implant a brain chip in a living patient, so that is one reason to cheer. And then...
have you got a form I can sign up?
I don't think you need one, honestly. And the first ever kidney transplant from a genetically modified pig to a human was also performed. So at least in that regard, we have some advancements, some positive outcomes. And I hope we'll see more of them in the coming year. By the way, why would you need a chip, John?
To help me, look, advancing ages, and I need to get an AI upgrade because I'm thinking that nanotechnology is going to provide a lot of solutions and a lot of competition.
Okay. I still don't think you need that. Thank you so much, John, for being here with us.
Thank you.
And thank you for watching. We'll see you in the new year. And in the meantime, here's a little breakdown of my breakdowns. Okay, let's go.
Hey, beautiful, do you want to buy crypto?
Australia.
Putin.
Once upon a time in the last century. Brandish. Everything. Go. I'm not gonna show my fingers, or should I show my fingers? That's a spectacular bombshell. I can't believe I wrote this.
I'm for real.
Okay, sexy time. Oh yeah. Thank you. Excuse me for problems. Look, this is meant to be ironic.